Welcome to the Teachers on Fire podcast, where I profile agents of growth and transformation in education today. Each guest shares their highs, their lows, their passions, their goals, and the resources that are shaping their thinking and inspiring their practice. For show notes and links from each episode, visit teachersonfire.net. You can also follow the show at Teachers on Fire on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, please subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's meet today's guest. Today, I'm speaking with Rabbi Michael Cohen. Michael is a designer, educator, creativity instigator, podcaster, YouTuber, speaker, and Apple Distinguished Educator. He's also the Director of Innovation at Yeshiva University of Los Angeles Boys High School and the author of Educated by Design, Designing the Space to Experiment, Explore, and Extract Your Creative Potential. Great book. Follow Rabbi Michael Cohen on Twitter and Instagram at The Tech Rabbi. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk education?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially now, more than ever.
Well, we'll get into that very quickly. First of all, why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about your current context in education? What does that look like?
So I'm super blessed to be at a really amazing school. It's a boys' high school in Los Angeles. Yeshiva University has different lab schools around the country, and there's a boys and girls school based in LA. So I'm their director of innovation, and I am there to build their entrepreneurship program to provide new avenues for students that might not see themselves as engineers, at least from how they define engineer, and STEAM and STEM and all of these different technical areas that we bundle into innovation. And then really just give the teachers that are part of my colleague team the opportunity to collaborate and really just make awesome learning experiences. And then the double level of blessing is that I'm also very fortunate to travel the country up until a month ago and work with educators, all over the country, all over the world. I was supposed to be in South Africa last week, and bring that same type of hopefully empowering awareness to educators about just how much they can do for students to turn them into better future adults.
You alluded to the crisis, and before we go any further, I need to ask you about what that looks like in your world. So tell me about your school's response, your strategy, and what do things look like particularly for you?
So our school is one-to-one MacBook. We're one of the early one-to-one MacBook schools. I think 10, 11 years now they've been one-to-one. And so it's just part of the way that the school functions. So the students are, they're on the Power School LMS, the teachers are in Zoom, and the students are learning, and the days shorten. We've shortened the periods. Our school is actually dual curriculum, and we usually finish school at 5:00 in the afternoon every day. So we're finishing about 2:30, and the morale, I think, is high because we spend just as much time. I think if you really look at it cumulatively, just as much time focusing on the social emotional well-being of students and their struggles, and having that empathy lens for are there ways that the virus is impacting them directly, or their family members. So we have different social events that we do, Saturday night, Friday morning, and other times during the week. And then we also have cut out one of our periods as an official class time to just office hours, just like, hey, how you doing? You want to chat? And I think that is a real blessing. That I think when we were in the just the running the gauntlet of teaching and learning, that we didn't really have that opportunity to connect with our students in that way. And I think that some of the most meaningful moments right now have come from outside of the traditional school day for these students.
Absolutely. I will second that. I'm an eighth grade teacher here in my context, and I've been opening every day with a circle check-in. And of course, middle school life is a little bit different than high school, but just that social emotional time to, as you say, hang out and connect with kids is so meaningful. Well, before we continue with the present, let's take a step back into the past. Michael, would you tell us about a low moment or an experience of adversity that you've faced somewhere in your teaching or education career and describe how you overcame it?
Yeah, there is a moment that I probably check in on at least on a monthly basis. So I got into education as a design instructor for a school fashion institute of design and merchandising in Los Angeles. And I was a designer, creative director, did not consider myself to be an educator. And without getting too much into that, there was a moment where I was a newly hired director of education technology, which also is like a story in of itself. But the point of answering what you asked was, there was a point where I felt like a fraud. I understand technology and I understand how to mentor and support people, but I didn't have the formal education. I didn't have the degree or the pedigree of effective and professional pedagogy, and right, all these things that many educators will get as they do an undergrad and then for sure a master's. So there was a point where I really was frustrated because I had given up so much in the world of design and creativity. I wasn't yet quite like a legitimate educator, so to speak, and I just felt like I was really torn and I didn't know what to do. So I sat down for a moment and I realized that when we can reflect on the journeys and the experiences that we have and understand how that journey was really just a mission critical stop at some much bigger thing than just us as individuals, we're easily able to come to terms, to forgive ourselves, to, I don't want to say settle in the negative, but just really just take a step back and then figure out how to move forward. And so that low point was something that drove me to do two things. One is I got a master's in education. It was an accelerated 18-month program, which was absolutely crazy for me and my family. At that point, this was 2015, so I had three kids at the time, three very young kids. I think it was three under five, and it was just really hard, but something I had to do. And then the second piece to solve that was being true to who I am. I am a designer, I am a creator, and I had to figure out ways to bring that back into my teaching practice and my leadership practice. And without getting too much into that, because I'm sure that'll be part of some of the follow-up questions, that I think was a way for me to really long-windedly answer how I solved this major issue that as I said before, I still think about as I'm just checking in and reflecting every month, every couple months.
We hear that term imposter syndrome battered around a lot, and you've mentioned something here. I don't think you used the term actually, but you've mentioned something here, and that is that one of our options is to really lean into that and get hungry, right, and build up our credentials and our training and our expertise and our skills. And that's I feel like that's a piece of advice that you don't hear very often in edu Twitter and in the education community. And I think that's great advice. Well, you went on, of course, to write Educated by Design, and I'd like to talk about that book next. The subtitle reads Designing the Space to Experiment, Explore, and Extract Your Creative Potential. So many good directions that we could go here, and it's been fun to hear you discuss your ideas chapter by chapter on the podcast. I know you're taking a bit of a hiatus there, but let's start with this quote. You write, "We want our students to believe that they have the ability to create something incredible, but for that to happen, they must experience the freedom of authentic learning. Our students must be allowed to take risks and be given the space to experiment, fail, and try again." So, can you talk more about what you mean by authentic learning? How can school leaders and teachers move their practices and thinking in this direction?
So the authentic piece is it's interesting because I see it as actually there's two different really critical components to that. The first is that the students have to see the value and be invested in it, and that's usually where it ends, right? It's like, oh, we real world, we gotta give our students these, authentic experiences that are just really part of, some, insert some sort of business, jargon or buzzword. So it is that there has to be a way that as educators we are seeking out opportunities for our students to see the world and just have an opportunity to figure things out around business or social good or some sort of very specific niche that they're interested in pursuing. But at the same time, we are charged with giving our students the skills of analysis, of research, of writing, of strong communication, and of being able to just really make sense of information. And I think that it has to be a balance. So yes, we want to come up with, cool project-based learning, design thinking, all these like really cool things. But at the end of the day, I reached out once to a CEO of a major sports memorabilia company. And it was one of those ask me anything tweets. And I said, what's the most important thing that a high school student should leave, should graduate with? Like, what is that core skill? So he didn't say business. He didn't say, entrepreneurial mindset. He said strong writing skills, because that is the core for all communication. And I told it to the English teacher. Obviously, she laughed and was like, "Well, duh! Like, obviously." But it's right. It's important that our students know that there are many skills that they need, and that's why we're here. But I think it's the content that needs to be a little more flexible, and we need to kind of push aside just a little bit, not push it off a cliff, but push aside the way that we've canonized certain curricular content, that like it must be an 11th grader must know this or learn this or read this, and if not, are they truly an 11th grader?
I like that a lot. Well, you also wrote in the same book, Michael, that, and I'll quote here, I believe that creativity is a mindset, not an art set. And that's an expression that I come across a few times. I love that quote because I hear the growth mindset there, and Carol Dweck's book Mindset really was a game changer for me. And when I talk about mindset, I think of the ideas that our identities and our capacities to learn are not fixed, that we all have that creative capacity. So what is your word to students and educators who have decided that they are not creative people?
So it's it's hard for me to answer that from my perspective. Because I wrote the book, so like I already have I have prejudice against it because I went to art school and I have this creative physical skill that I can employ. And it was actually I've heard it a couple times, but last week I was having a Zoom conference call with an individual. She works for a nonprofit and former educator, and she is part of this leadership team, and it is really up to her to move and advance forward these strategic initiatives for the nonprofit. And she said, I read your book and I really never considered myself to be creative, but you gave me the language to look for the creativity in my own life. And I was like, whoa, like can I quote you? I got goosebumps, because that's what it is. It's you being able to understand that creativity is about the way that you look at the world. It's about the way that you connect information together. And that could translate as creativity in leadership, creativity in program or curricular design, lesson design. I make pretty good lessons, but I'm an idea person. And I know there are people, I'm collaborating right now with somebody on a couple different lessons, and she is blowing me out of the water. And not like in a, it's not a competition, but like, I'm blown away at how I see where my weakness is, but then where her strength, where her weakness is, and together we're producing some really great things. So it's those moments where we sort of get away from the art, the music, the dance, the culinary, these things that we do. And the other thing that's helpful, but it's really kind of like extra credit, is like go learn about these artists, go learn about these these composers, And you'll soon discover that it wasn't about making music. It wasn't about making art. It was this driving force to disrupt or to comment on the challenges of the times that really pushed great people to create.
Awesome. Just before we got on the call here, Michael, I was looking at one of your recent, I think you just published this video today about Adobe Post Spark, if I have that right. And, there's so much value there. And I was thinking, isn't it unfortunate? I'm sure you've heard it too, that, we hear educators say it, well, I'm not an artist, I'm not a designer, I'm not a tech person. And just for every person, every educator in particular, to keep in mind that creative capacity is there. It just needs to be cultivated. And I love that response from that reader that you quoted. That was awesome. Michael, how are you looking to grow professionally and improve your practice in the coming year? Can you share about a specific professional goal or maybe a project that you're currently working on?
Yeah, so I am right now really a little bit obsessed. And for those that are listening and checking out the YouTube channel, hopefully by the time they hear this, I will have produced a number of other videos. This methodology of storytelling and of really trying to find ways to bring words and images to sort of synthesize the spoken word when we tell stories. So I look at it's on. I saw this meme, and I think this will help with the context. I saw this meme. It was like YouTubers, like February 2020, YouTubers is not a job, and then March 2020 was like all teachers are now YouTubers, right? So the way in which you can tell stories, even just like with lighting. I mean, it's little things like that I'm now really obsessed with as I'm very much stuck in quarantine in my creativity lab. I don't even have a cool name for it yet because it's still pretty new. But I have this space at my house, and I'm creating content, but I'm trying to create it in a way that teachers can see, like, I might create that. I could create that. So trying to keep it short, trying to keep it engaging, and then of course trying to keep it relevant to a educator that's probably not going to go out and spend more than $50 on upping their content creation game. So I'm looking around this room right now, and I have thousands of dollars worth of content creation hardware, and that's just not realistic. So, one of the things you had mentioned earlier, the video I just posted. So I was really excited about that video because it's actually going to spawn a very quick third or second video, which is I edited the entire video on my iPhone. So it's like there's no excuse now. Like, you have a smartphone if you are an educator. I mean, I would say, at least 75% of educators have a smartphone. And for free on your smartphone, on an app, you can film yourself, you can edit and produce and just come up with some really cool, powerful visuals that I think could just change the way in which we connect content to our students and to show them those skills and value that they're going to need to have, because most professions are requiring this storytelling as a way of standing out as a professional. And yeah, I'm just really excited about it because I feel like now is the time. We're all on the internet. We're all now consuming digitally. And we have an opportunity to come up with new ways to create content, to author content, to produce content that we could have done before, but we probably didn't really need to because there wasn't such an urgency and there wasn't such an emphasis on online connection.
It is an incredible time to make video content as an educator. A couple of things to think about. Number one, you've got hundreds of thousands of educators diving full tilt into these ed tech tools that they are completely unfamiliar with, right? And platforms, and they are looking for guidance. And then two, you've got virtually every ed tech company out there offering their premium services on a free basis, right? For these schools and educators that are locked out. And so I completely agree. I've been pumping out these 2-3 minute demo and tutorial videos as fast as I possibly can, just because I think they are so valuable. And a lot of them I can't share outside of my school if they happen to include student names, but people need to see that step by step. And I love the feel of what you are doing to, as you say, make it accessible for your typical educator. Well, let's go outside of education if we can, Michael, and talk about another area of learning for you. What is it that ignites your passions when you leave the school and really brings you alive as a human being? Is there another area of interest in your life that really ignites your passions?
Well, yes, there is. It's a little bit of a sore subject right now under quarantine, but I am an avid rock climber, and I am at the rock climbing gym just a few minutes away from my house, probably 3 days a week. And when I travel, I make it. Some people collect snow globes. I actually make sure that I visit a local climbing gym and get in a session when I'm on the road.
Share about a personal habit or a productivity hack that contributes to your success. Is there an app or a routine that you really rely on?
Um, I'm very productive, but it's honestly sometimes I feel like it's a triage. So I do physical note taking and physical productivity management in an analog journal. I do it better than digital, but I actually am working on a project right now with a group of people, and they have finally shown me the power of Trello, and I'm now obsessed with Trello. So I actually now see, because the blank canvas is so daunting when we're trying to start. Even in the analog journal, it's like, how am I going to fill this with all the things I need to do and make sense and manage them? But I finally have seen Trello that I'm now excited to explore that, like for my own personal work, but I'm very much using it over the past couple of weeks with this group. So I would definitely recommend Trello in that mix. And then, yeah, I mean, I think being healthy, eating healthy, and exercising in whatever way we can has been really a game changer. And it's about 18 months now of me really focused on my health, my eating, my exercise, and also my sleep. So when we talk about being productive, you could have all the apps in the world, but if you're not taking care of yourself, which I know as educators we're not good at doing, then it doesn't matter what app you have. It's going to be a struggle.
Yeah, well said. Well, it's time for your quick picks. And here we want to know the education voices and resources that are really shaping your practice and inspiring your thinking today. So, starting at Twitter, tell us about someone we should follow there and share why they've been inspiring you lately.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was at METC in St. Louis in I can't even remember like what day it is now. This was in February. I was like, where am I in February? And I had an opportunity on to spend some time with some different educators there in person, and I'm always excited when that you have your Twitter connections and then you connect with them in real life, and then it readjusts how much you focus on checking out what they're doing. So Kimlane Clark, Ask a Techno Girl, she is doing incredible things around STEM and computer science, especially for girls. So she's awesome. Tanya Avrith, who is the Adobe Spark education evangelist, she is just always coming up with incredible ways to bring creativity into those areas where more and more educators can feel very confident about being creative and acknowledging their creative growth. And then Michael Hernandez, his Twitter handle, it's like when they don't use their names, like how do you remember? So Cinehead, Cinehead. So he is a media teacher at a high school, and he's done some amazing projects, and the quarantine is not stopping his creative juices. So people should definitely check out the webinars and the way that he just makes media creation and journalism more accessible for students. Because I think right now students need to know that their writing skills to plan out content and the way that they can document and not we say journal, and it's this sort of this like little secret thing that you do, but like journal as in journalism, that you could actually be documenting and sharing the truth and the reality of where you are. And the more citizen journals we have, citizen journalists we have, I think the more authentic and truthful our awareness can be around what's happening in other communities that aren't necessarily close to ours. So those are three that, long-winded. I know you said rapid, but like I can't help but just showcase their awesomeness.
Well, I know you know who Gary Vee is, and something he preaches is just document the learning journey, and don't overthink it. And I think so many educators undervalue what their content is worth if they would simply document their learning. And the same goes for our learners. So love that. Point us to an ed tech tool that you currently love using somewhere in your classroom and with your learners, Michael. I know we've talked about Trello as a productivity tool, and Adobe Spark Post as a creative tool. Is there something else that maybe in the remote learning environment you are really enjoying?
So I wanna say Zoom because I think that's a funny answer, but I don't know. It's crazy because Zoom. I've been using Zoom for probably 3 years now on a regular basis. I mean, I'm having video conferences, even before the quarantine. Like, this is a regular thing for me. And I never had much of a problem. But then they go from 10 million to 200 million users. And then you start to see like flaws that people didn't notice, security exploits that people didn't notice. So, with all of the imperfections of Zoom, I am just absolutely blown away at the way in which people are securely and safely and intelligently creating massive spaces to connect with other people. So yes, there's Zoom bombing. I was in a it's called a Fabrengen. I was in a Hasidic gathering over Zoom last night for 2 hours, listening to a rabbi just give his insights and give us courage around these very uncertain times. There were 75 people inside the Zoom room. There were zero problems because it was set up the right way. It was live streamed to YouTube. And you just had this opportunity for me to see people that I see on a regular basis that I don't get to see, to hear from incredible minds that might not be accessible because they were at a live event somewhere and it wasn't recorded. And it just really, for me, I think it's so simple. Like, yes, there are other amazing collaborative live collaboration tools. You can use Adobe XD and Google Apps and things like that allow for creation to happen live together. Live keynote collaboration. But I want to keep it simple for a moment. And because Zoom is getting so much heat for its privacy issues, if you set it up right, there are very minimal issues, and the issues that are there, they are responding with such speed. It happens to be they're a publicly traded company, so they can do that with such speed that literally from March 7th until today, they've come up with 3 major updates, and they've frozen all feature R&D, and they're just focusing on perfecting what they have. So, people hate on it, but I think it's incredible at the way that it's connected. Elderly that live alone, people that are, super extroverted like myself, who are very social, but just the ways that like people are doing more learning and more connection now than I think they did before.
So good. Recommend one book, Michael, one that you've been reading lately, perhaps, or I'd love to hear this, one of your all-time faves that's been deeply influential.
It's so hard. As I was reviewing that one question, I was like, okay, the favorite book. So the truth is, the really one of the books that has made a huge impact on me is What I Wish I Knew When I Was 20 from Professor Tina Seelig. And she is just, I mean, besides being a distant mentor and someone that I learn from on a regular basis and I've connected with, it's a evergreen, timeless book. And then I'm just gonna break the rules because you said one, but then one that I'm really excited about right now that I am currently reading that someone recommended to me was Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, and I can't put that one down.
I have a theory that every podcast producer started out as a podcast fan. And I'd love to hear in a moment, perhaps, or let's get into it right now. What is your truer love? Because you've dabbled kind of a couple of times, right? A couple of seasons in the podcast realm, but right now you've put that on the shelf. You're full blast into YouTube. So is that your truer passion, would you say? Or how do you feel about those two mediums?
I love the camera. I do. I love the way in which the visual opportunities exist to just captivate and engage people around things that I'm passionate in sharing. And I think I'm passionate on audio, and I do love it. But for me, it's very hard to manage it all. And as you had mentioned Gary Vee earlier, so his podcast has had a huge impact on me over the years. And before his podcast, the books, is like being able to do that slice and dice of different types of content and push it out. I think for me, because the podcasts that I love so much are so they're so intentional. Yours is a perfect example. When I listen to your podcast, you have created this really incredible conversation that has so much diversity by the audience, or not the audience, but by the guests that you have on. And that's hard for me to do. And because of that, I always sort of feel like, can I do like just a whatever podcast where I just like capture audio and just put it out there, or does it have to be polished? And maybe you could give me some insight into that, because it's been hard for me.
Well, I think I messaged you one time after. I remember one episode where you just sort of riffed as you walked through the park and ate a sandwich or something. And I just think more educators need to do that because, I talk to other podcasters that are so consumed with quality. And yes, we want our quality to be high, as I'm sure you agree in the YouTube space. But on the other hand, that can hold a lot of people back from ever getting anything out, and so there has to be that balance, I think. Well, let's end the conversation with two questions about video. Talk to us about a YouTube channel that inspires you right now.
So I've been inspired for a while with Claudio Zavala. He is an educator that I met years ago at ISTE, and he's an educator and he's also a creator. And his channel has inspired me really to get my own channel like back on track. And just the way he creates and tells stories and engages you and then helps you and educates you. And also, one of the things about his channel that I love and I'm really trying to do with my own is, when we think of ourselves as educators, we think of ourselves as like, okay, I'm a high school innovation director. You had mentioned that you are an 8th grade educator, but we're more than that. We have the ability, and I think this now that we're all on the internet, educators are people that have the ability to help bring clarity and help build skill in other people, whether it's knowledge, whether it's hands-on skills, actionable skills. And so I think right now I'm trying to sort of redesign the way in which I use the vernacular around education, that it should be open to a broader audience, but still stay true to my core, my love, which is supporting teachers and supporting young people. So he's doing that, and that for me just really gets me excited. So his stuff is awesome.
Well, our friend Gary would say that every company is a media company in 2020. And I think that language doesn't necessarily compute for a lot of educators, but maybe to use the language that every educator is an educator beyond their own walls, right? And we all have that opportunity to bring information and insights, as you said, to countless people. The audience is infinite. And I tell my boys all the time, like, seriously, you do not understand what has happened in the last 30 years. This is such a remarkable opportunity to share your ideas with the world. Well, the last question, you mentioned how productive you are and the triage effect. So I don't know how you'll go on this one, but what are you watching on Netflix right now in the quarantine life?
So I don't watch television. I don't. I haven't watched television in years. I think the last thing that I binge watched was Lost. So I don't know when Lost ended, but like that was like the end. I think that ruined television for me, that ending. So I watched some documentaries mostly around rock climbing So, Real Rock 13, which is like super nerd alert, or The Dawn Wall, which is a little bit more mainstream because that Tommy Cadwell, who's featured in that one, he trained Alex Honnold, who did the climbing movie Free Solo, which I know everybody's heard of now, right? So I watch those, and that is really like my limit. So yeah, for better or for worse.
I can see that in you, and I can tell you as well, I'm sure you've heard of the Tiger King, and I can say you're not missing much. Michael, this has been a lot of fun. What are the best ways for listeners interested in your message and in your, let's say, brand of Educated by Design and everything else you're working on right now? What are the best ways for them to connect?
Yeah, so I'm going to rank them because I am literally on every single social media platform, including TikTok. There's a couple like random ones that have actually come out over the past couple months. So I won't even mention those because who knows if those will stand the test of time. So I'll rank like the frequency in which I'm spending time on these platforms in hopes that your awesome listeners will, reach out and connect with me there. So I'm on Twitter all the time. And that's a place where I love just having conversations with educators. I post a lot of content right now, a lot of focus on my YouTube channel, because I feel like right now I have to support educators and give them, ways of making sense of tools and approaches to online learning and the tools that they have access to. Then Instagram, I love that platform because I'm super visual. Then Facebook. And really, those are the top. There's that. I got a blog, I got a book on Amazon, but like no one's gonna like have a conversation with me on Amazon.
Well, that is true. Although you can follow authors there, and I do that a little bit. But I made one mistake, and you were very gracious. I mentioned the brand of Educated by Design, but you've actually built a very solid brand around the Tech Rabbi, and so that's worth the repeating. I think for anyone trying to hunt you down online, you can be found everywhere at the Tech Rabbi, right?
Yep, that's it.
Well, sounds good, Michael. Again, thank you so much for sharing your time with the podcast today. I have to say, I'm a little starstruck. I've heard you on a few different podcasts. I've listened to your own podcast, and now to connect with you in real time has been a real treat for me. So thank you again. Take care, stay safe, and let's talk again soon.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Awesome energy. And I love your podcast.
Before we sign off today, I'd like to share some highlights from around the Teachers on Fire Nation this week. Our first stop is on Twitter, where Chris Woods at Daily STEM tweeted in reference to episode 134 with my guest Jesus Huerta, quote, "I finally got to listen, and it was great to hear the story behind at Jesus H 1979. Keep up the great work, Jesus, and thank you, Tim, for letting him share what fuels his hashtag 3D printed fire," end quote. Well, thank you so much for the encouraging tweet, Chris. If you're new to Chris Woods, make sure you tune into the STEM Everyday podcast and follow him on Twitter for a constant flow of imaginative STEM activities that students and families can try anywhere. His content has never been more timely. Next, on Instagram, I posted a picture of my ideal daily work schedule for remote learning. I won't bore you with the timeline here, but if you are interested to see what my ideal remote learning day looks like, make sure to follow me at Teachers on Fire on Instagram. Dr. Shan at This Is Me Movement, and I'll spell that, This Is Me MVMT, commented, quote, "I need to get on this schedule," end quote. And to that I say good luck, Dr. Shan. I can't claim to be hitting those time horizons every day, but it's felt so good just to have some goals and even some hope at sanity in this environment where we constantly want to be available to support our learners. So we are in this together, and Dr. Shan, I appreciate the encouragement. On the Teachers on Fire page on Facebook, in response to my question about what is the one thing that is working well for you right now in remote learning, Jason Shumway wrote, quote, "I have been using Google Forms to get feedback from parents and students. This has been extremely valuable. Also, been loving Flipgrid, end quote. Well, thank you so much for the comment, Jason. I'm going to second your picks of Flipgrid and Google Forms. And hey, if you have some results from your Google Forms surveys, I am very interested to see both your questions and the lovely graphs that Google Forms spits out from those. So make sure to share and tag me if they are on the interweb somewhere. To all who have read, viewed, liked, retweeted, commented, or replied to my content on any of these platforms, thank you. You are the fuel to my fire, and I so appreciate your support. Well, if you're looking for some inspiring reading, make sure you drop by the Teachers on Fire magazine on Medium, where we featured recent articles by Tom Hobson, Kelly Christopherson, 16-year-old Bennett Jester, and I'm so excited to feature a current high school student. Get a load of this guy. He is really putting out some ideas in a bold and compelling manner, so check out his material. We've also featured pieces by Dr. Francois Nodia, Debbie Tannenbaum, and me. The Teachers on Fire magazine is a Medium publication, and you'll find it on medium.com or on the Medium app. To join our writing team there, your first step is to create a Medium account using your Google credentials. Then message Teachers on Fire on any social media platform for more details, and I'll add you as a writer for the publication. You'll be all set, and it's easy from there. Speaking of blogging, check out the Teacher Blogs podcast. Recent posts there have featured educators like Lynn Thomas and Brad Davis. I continue to love the experience of hearing bloggers read their articles in their own voices. And let's face it, we don't always have time to read blog posts, but sometimes we have the time to listen. So make sure you subscribe to the Teacher Blogs podcast. I will leave you with this quote from my reading Teachers on Fire. It's from a book called Inquiry Mindset, Nurturing the Dreams, Wonders, and Curiosities of Our Youngest Learners. It's by Trevor McKenzie. You'll find him on Twitter at Trev_McKenzie, and Rebecca Bathurst Hunt. You'll find her at R.Bathurst Hunt. And they write, quote, by empowering students to choose how they would like to show their learning, we enable them to tap into their strengths, interests, and learning styles, end quote. Empowering students to choose how they would like to show their learning. That so goes against the traditional norms we all grew up with. But as we allow more voice and choice in the classroom, that's when we really unlock the passion and potential in every learner. And I really love that quote. Again, I am your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. I hope that in some way the content you heard from Rabbi Michael Cohen ignited your thinking and inspired your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care and stay safe.